Problems appear real only because the mind gives form to its own resistance. When an event occurs, it arrives as a simple moment, neither good nor bad, yet the mind instantly begins to analyze, compare, and judge. It imagines a different version of reality and insists that this current moment should match that imaginary design. From this refusal to accept what is, a sense of struggle begins to grow, and that struggle is what we later call a problem. If you look closely, the difficulty is rarely in the situation itself, but in the story woven around it. A delayed plan becomes a disaster only when the mind insists it must go a certain way. A change in routine becomes chaos only when we fail to release our grip on what we expected. If you strip away these expectations, the situation becomes simpler, less personal, and far less painful. This perspective reveals something valuable. The mind is constantly trying to protect you by predicting what might happen and preparing you for it. Yet in doing so, it often creates unnecessary fear. When a moment unfolds differently than planned, the mind reacts as if something is broken, or as if life is working against you. But in reality, life is simply moving in its natural pattern, free from the rigid structures your thoughts create. What you experience as tension is merely the friction between truth and expectation. The moment you soften your stance and allow the event to be as it is, the tension eases and the so-called problem dissolves. Imagine watching clouds drift across the sky. You don't demand they form certain shapes or move at a certain pace. You allow them to be, and in that acceptance, there is no struggle. Situations in life follow the same principle. They pass, transform, and shift without needing your internal resistance. The mind's label of problem is like declaring a cloud wrong for not forming the image you wanted. When you see the humor in that, life becomes lighter. This doesn't mean ignoring responsibility or avoiding action. Instead, it means seeing reality clearly without adding layers of fear, judgment, or imagined catastrophe. Once the emotional weight is removed, you respond with clarity rather than panic. You act not from fear but from understanding. A clear mind sees opportunities, possibilities, and lessons where a clouded mind sees obstacles. When you realize that a problem is simply a story created by resistance, you gain freedom. You no longer feel trapped by circumstances because you understand that the real source of suffering lies within perception, not in the event itself. You begin to trust your ability to navigate life without needing everything to unfold perfectly. Each moment becomes easier to face, and even unexpected events no longer shake your sense of inner balance. By recognizing that problems are not fixed realities, but interpretations born from resistance, you reclaim your natural ease. Life becomes less about fighting and more about flowing, less about fear and more about presence. And in that presence, you discover a quieter, deeper strength that carries you through every moment with grace. Life moves with an effortless rhythm, unfolding moment by moment without asking permission or offering apologies. Waves rise and fall, winds shift, seasons transform, and nothing in nature ever questions its own timing. Yet humans have developed the habit of interpreting these natural movements as obstacles. A situation that simply exists becomes labeled as stressful, difficult, or unfair, even though life itself has made no such claim. The wave is only a wave, but the mind calls it a problem because it expected still water. This gap between what is and what we think should be is what creates the sense of struggle, even though the event itself remains neutral. When this is understood, there is a deep realization that life itself has no problems. Only the mind does. Everything in existence moves according to patterns far older and wiser than personal preference. The tides do not rush because someone is in a hurry. Time does not slow because someone wishes for more of it. Life expresses itself with incredible intelligence, weaving events together in ways that often make sense only after they pass. Yet when we stand inside these moments, we sometimes forget that they are part of a larger flow. We judge them as isolated disruptions rather than pieces of a greater harmony. A delay, an unexpected turn, a plan undone. Each of these is simply life shifting direction. But because the mind judges it instantly, it feels like turmoil instead of transition. When we observe without labeling, a remarkable shift happens. The moment becomes lighter, gentler, easier to understand. What once appeared threatening begins to look like a natural change. Just as a river bends around rocks without complaint, we can learn to move with life rather than bracing against it. Resistance makes the current feel stronger, but surrender turns movement into glide. The world does not attack us. It simply transforms, and we are invited to transform with it. The idea that life contains no inherent problems frees us from the weight of constant analysis. Instead of asking why something is happening, we begin to ask how we can move with it. This shift in perspective softens the emotional burden we often carry. If a situation is not inherently a problem, then we do not need to react with fear or frustration. We can respond with clarity, trust, and adaptability. This situation that once felt like a crisis becomes a temporary wave that passes when we stop struggling against it. Seeing life as a flow rather than a set of obstacles brings an inner calm. It allows us to recognize that everything we experience, joy, change, uncertainty, transition, belongs here. Nothing is out of place. Nothing is wrong. Each moment is part of a larger unfolding that does not require our approval to continue. When we embrace this understanding, the world feels less hostile and more alive. We stop waiting for conditions to be perfect and begin participating in life as it comes, discovering that the absence of struggle reveals a deeper sense of peace. Peace is not something we earn by repairing every corner of our lives. It does not wait for perfection, nor does it require every loose end to be tied before it settles within us. Peace is found in accepting the moment as it stands, even when it arrives carrying uncertainty, change, or discomfort. Most of the stress we feel comes from believing life must match our ideal version of events before we can relax. We tell ourselves that calm will come only when every task is completed, every fear resolved, every situation arranged just the way we want. But this creates a chase with no finish line, because life never stops moving, and situations never stay fixed long enough to satisfy an endless list of demands. When we release the need for the moment to be different, we discover a gentler way of living. Acceptance does not mean agreeing with everything or liking every circumstance. It simply means allowing reality to stand without putting pressure on ourselves to resist it. The body softens, the mind clears, and the emotions stop racing. The struggle fades, not because the world becomes perfect, but because we stop fighting what is already here. Peace, then, is not a reward for control, but a result of surrender. It arises when we stop expecting life to fall in line with our plans and instead learn to move with its rhythm. Consider how often we postpone inner calm. We say we will feel better when the job improves, when the relationship settles, when finances change, when tomorrow arrives with better conditions. By doing this, we tie our well-being to an uncertain future. But life does not promise perfect timing. It offers presence, and presence is always available. Even in difficult moments, there is space inside us that remains steady, ready to be accessed the moment we stop resisting. This space is not fragile. It does not depend on flawless circumstances. It grows the more we turn toward it. When we accept the moment, we respond more effectively. Instead of reacting from fear or frustration, we act with clarity. We make wiser choices because we are no longer blinded by the emotional storm that resistance creates. Acceptance grounds us, allowing us to see the situation as it truly is rather than through the distortions of stress. And from this clear view, solutions appear naturally. We navigate with steadiness rather than panic. This understanding transforms our relationship with life. We stop treating every unexpected event as an enemy and begin to recognize it as part of a larger unfolding that we do not need to control. The world stops feeling like a battlefield and becomes a landscape we can move through with openness and resilience. Peace becomes a companion rather than a distant dream, something we return to again and again by choosing presence over resistance. In this way, calm is no longer something we chase. It becomes something we allow, something we uncover within ourselves the moment we stop demanding the world to be different before we can breathe. You are not the turmoil you experience. You are the awareness in which the turmoil appears. This simple realization changes the entire way you meet life. Instead of feeling trapped inside every difficulty, you begin to see that you are the observer of it, the silent presence behind every emotion, every thought, every shifting circumstance. Situations may shake your surface, but they cannot touch the deeper space within you that remains steady. When you identify only with the mind and its stories, everything feels personal and overwhelming. But when you recognize yourself as the one who watches those stories unfold, the weight begins to lift. You stop being dragged around by every worry and start understanding that you have always been larger than the experiences passing through you. Events rise and fall like waves, yet the awareness observing them stays constant. Fear may arise, confusion may appear, frustration may surge, but none of these states define you. They happen within you like clouds passing across a vast sky. The sky does not cling to storms, and neither do you need to cling to the emotions moving through your life. This shift is not about escaping responsibilities or denying feelings. It is about seeing clearly that you are not limited to the temporary forms life takes. You have a deeper center, a spaciousness that remains untouched by the noise of circumstance. When you understand this, your entire relationship with challenges transforms. Instead of thinking, "I am the problem," you realize, "I am the one seeing it." This distance doesn't make you cold or detached. Instead, it gives you room to breathe, to respond thoughtfully rather than react automatically. The moment you stop identifying with the chaos of the moment, you gain clarity. Solutions reveal themselves, emotions soften, and situations that once felt unmanageable begin to lighten. You no longer feel like a small figure lost in a storm, but like a wide and steady presence in which storms come and go. Life becomes less intimidating when you stop confusing temporary states with your true nature. The mind may panic, but you can observe that panic. The body may feel tension, but you can notice that tension. Thoughts may spiral, but you are the one watching them move, not the one being controlled by them. This understanding creates a sense of inner space, and within that space, peace naturally arises. Not because life has become easier, but because you have discovered a place within yourself that remains calm even when everything around you shifts. In this deeper awareness, challenges no longer define you. They become experiences, not identities. You meet them with a grounded presence rather than fear. You see them as passing waves rather than permanent realities. And as you grow more familiar with this inner stillness, you discover that you are far more resilient, capable, and expansive than you once believed. You are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. In the end, this speech reminds us that the weight we carry in life is often born not from the world itself, but from the way we interpret it. What we call problems are usually reflections of our own resistance, expectations, and judgments. Life, in its natural state, simply unfolds, offering experiences rather than obstacles. Peace is found when we stop demanding that everything bend to our will, and instead begin to flow with the rhythm of each moment. And through this understanding, we realize that we are not defined by the struggles we face, but by the awareness that witnesses them. This perspective frees us. It shows us that the power to feel grounded, calm, and clear has always been within us. waiting beneath the noise of thought. When we reconnect with that inner spaciousness, life becomes less of a battle and more of a dance. Situations continue to rise and fall, yet we navigate them with a sense of ease, knowing we are larger than anything that comes our way. In recognizing that problems don't truly exist in the way we imagine them, we reclaim our ability to live with presence, openness, and a deeper trust in the flow of existence.